Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Astrid Ochoa. I'm the Executive Director of Future of California Elections. Welcome to our webinar, Getting the Message Out, Voting in Los Angeles for the 2020 Presidential Election. Today's webinar will cover voting options for Los Angeles County voters and the resources available for organizations that want to help educate voters on voting safely in a pandemic. Voting this year is like no other. It will take all of us to ensure that Los Angeles voters know and understand their options. We are fortunate today to have a representative from Los Angeles County for the full length of the program to answer all of your questions. We will conclude the event with an open discussion for all of you to share your ideas and practices for how to conduct voter education in this current environment. We are at just 26 days before Election Day, and we know that time is precious. And so we want to thank you for joining us to learn together today. Our MC for the event is our FOS Project Coordinator, Katie Flaherty, who will introduce our featured speaker.
Thank you, Astrid. The Office of the Los Angeles County Registrar has been a partner to FOS since our founding almost a decade ago, continuously engaging and providing their expertise to this network. This partnership has become even more critical in this year as we all navigate elections through COVID-19. Jeff Klein is the Manager of Civic Engagement, Community Relations, and Legislation for the LA County Registrar Recorder and County Clerk. Jeff is going to share with us today the work LA County is doing to provide safe voting options for LA voters. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, everyone. I'm glad to be here today. Thank you to the Future of California Elections. Really appreciate the opportunity to present to everyone here today who is viewing this presentation. And one thing I always like to stress in today's world where information is so critical and making sure the correct information gets out into the community. Everyone here can serve as ambassadors for really taking the information, sharing it with people within your networks, sharing it with individuals who you come in contact with so that we can all stay well informed. So I have a presentation I'm going to go ahead and bring up, and give me 1 second and then we'll get into all the different voting options. So 1 second here. Okay. All right. So we have a very unusual election coming up. It's one election that we hopefully we never have to really administer this type of election before. We're conducting an election during a pandemic and during a public health crisis. But in addition to the pandemic, there are a number of other changes that are taking place that are relatively new. A little bit of context and background information. In the primary, we moved to what we call a vote center model based election. This moved us away from polling places, which the polling place model is basically you're assigned to one location and you have one day to vote, which is essentially election day. Under the vote center model, which as mentioned, we moved to in the March election, it's a period of voting where we have hundreds of vote centers around LA County, and you can vote at any of those vote centers during any point in the voting period. So this offers a lot of opportunity and convenience to voters. A little bit of information about LA County. We're the largest election jurisdiction, you may or may not be aware. We have over 10 million people. A little over 6 million are eligible, and about 5.5 million, 5.6 million are registered to vote. Just for reference, some interesting information. We have more registered voters in LA County than 43 states have statewide. So we have a lot of voters in LA County. It's a pretty big endeavor in order to administer our election. A little bit of an overview on the voting options and how we will be conducting the November election. We have sent vote by mail ballots out to all 5.5 million voters. This is actually 2.5 million more than we sent out in the primary. In this upcoming election, everyone will receive a vote by mail ballot. You do not have to request a vote by mail ballot, and you can use that to cast your vote, or you can vote in person at a vote center. We have over 750 vote centers around LA County. You can vote at any of those, as I mentioned under the vote center model. We have a period of voting and so you can use any of those vote centers during that period to vote. We are promoting vote by mail as the safest option during the pandemic because it is essentially contactless, and it keeps people from going out into public facilities, which is something that we want to avoid when not necessary. But we do want in-person voting to be available for anyone who does need services that are only available in person or just prefers to have that in-person voting experience. So the voting period, as mentioned, is 11 days. It's 10 days plus election day, and that gives us our 11 days total. And then there's multiple options in order to return your vote by mail ballot. We have about 400 vote by mail drop boxes around LA County. You can drop your vote by mail ballot off at any of those drop boxes. They are open right now. You can also mail your vote by mail ballot back. It is postage paid. And you can drop it off in person at any vote center. So multiple options in which you can return your vote by mail ballot, and just something that we want to provide as many options for voters to do. More on our vote by mail drop boxes. The picture you see here, this is what the drop boxes look like. There's essentially two sizes, and they're very secure, very safe. They are bolted to the ground, so when you see them out in the community, unless they happen to be maybe inside a facility where someone is watching it, most of them are bolted to the ground. You place your ballot inside, you want to sign the envelope, and that's very crucial. Make sure you sign it, seal it, and drop it inside, and then our staff are the ones who pick up that vote by mail ballot. I've heard a lot of rhetoric and talk in the community and around the country about whether or not vote by mail ballots are safe and secure in terms of election integrity. What makes it a very secure process is we do check the signature of every single vote by mail ballot. So if we receive 4 million vote by mail ballots back for this election, we will be checking 4 million signatures. Okay. One thing to note, actually, if you see in the upper right corner, you can go to our LAvote.net website. There's a lookup tool later in the presentation, or sorry, later in the program, we will be showing where you can find this information out. But for reference, there's a lookup tool at LAvote.net. Okay, so October 5th is when we started sending out vote by mail ballots. You might have already received yours. Some people have, in other presentations I've done, have received their vote by mail ballot. If you do want to mail it back, we have 17 days after the election in which to receive your vote by mail ballot. So you can use the Dropbox or you can mail it back. Again, it has to be postmarked by election day, 17 days to receive your ballot. And then also you can drop it off at any vote center in LA County, which I had mentioned at the beginning. If you would like to track your vote by mail ballot along its path, and as it goes through the process, you can sign up for Where's My Ballot. It's a state-run program, and it offers voters the opportunity to get real-time notifications when their ballot makes its way through the process. So go to california.ballottracks.net. You can sign up through that website, or you can actually go to LAvote.net, and there's a way to sign up to track your ballot at our site as well. So for vote centers, we have two types of vote centers. We have an 11-day vote center and a 5-day vote center. The 11-day vote centers, we have a little over 100 locations. They open on October 24th. And then the rest of the vote centers will open on October 30th. So there'll be about 650, a little more than 650 vote centers. And that gives us our over 750 vote centers. They're strategically placed around LA County. And one thing I'd like to highlight is that we have a unique opportunity this election. Some very high profile, very notable community partners have really stepped up to offer their facility as a vote center. So again, you can vote at any vote center in LA County. You might prefer some of these if you decide you want to vote in person, but you can also, again, drop your ballot off at one of these locations. But these are just a few of the high profile locations. There's a lot of other ones. The Uber headquarters, George Nakano Theater, Dodger Stadium, Staples Center, Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, Four Seasons Hotel. I know someone sent me a notification today about the Pantages just announced to their season ticket holders they're going to be a vote center. So a lot of really historic and high profile locations will be available to vote at. The hours for voting are going to be 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. all the way through November 2nd. On election day, the hours will still be the traditional 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. We wanted to create hours that were easy for voters. Whether if you work, you'll be able to vote in the evening. If you have a little bit more non-traditional schedule, then you could vote maybe earlier in the day. And then even on the weekend, we'll be open 10 to 7. You can vote at a vote center on the weekend as well. We have a lookup tool very similar to the vote by mail Dropbox tool. You can go to lavote.net and look up a vote center near you. In order to help voters find vote centers, we will be sending out some mail that will notify voters. So one thing that you will receive is a postcard, that is the graphic on the lower right. It'll give the few closest vote centers to your registered address. There'll be a barcode on it, very similar to the barcode in the graphic right above it. That graphic right above it is the sample ballot. So that barcode is an easy check-in barcode. When you show up to a vote center, if you bring the card or your sample ballot with you, we'll scan that and it'll check you in a lot quicker. If you forget to bring it with you, not a problem. We will go ahead and look you up on our own by just entering your name into our system, and the election worker will find you that way. But this is a little bit of an expedited, easier process to have everyone check in through. Okay, one other thing actually I do want to note about vote centers. In addition to the postcard mailer with the closest locations, all postal patrons around LA County will receive a booklet that lists every single vote center in LA County. So that's going not just to registered voters, but every household in LA County will get that booklet. And it's a great way for us to advertise all the locations and also let voters people who are eligible but not yet registered to vote. It lets them know the election's coming up. They still have an opportunity to participate and register and so forth. Okay, a little more on the in-person voting experience. We have something called a ballot marking device. You would have used this in the primary election if you voted in that election in person at a vote center. It is a paper ballot. It's fully secure. There's no internet connection, no network, no Wi-Fi, nothing like that. It simply plugs into the wall with a power cord. It provides an independent and private voting experience. So it really allows anyone to use this voting system regardless of level of accessibility. So for example, this is the first voting system ever developed where someone who is blind can actually vote a completely independent ballot. They do not have to tell anyone their selections, and they do not have to give anyone their ballot. There's an integrated ballot box. When you cast your ballot, it goes right into the ballot box that is attached to the back of the ballot marking device. It is also fully accessible in terms of if you have something like a sip and puff device, you can plug that in and you can vote using your sip and puff device. There's an audio headset if you want to listen to your ballot. So the example I gave were someone who is blind. If they need to listen to their ballot to make selections, that is available. And it is available in multiple languages that we offer services to voters in LA County. So if you need a translation of your ballot, it'll be on the screen, and you can also listen to that translation through the headset as well. The interactive sample ballot, we rolled this out in the March primary along with the ballot marking device, and this is really an expedited process. Everyone will receive the paper sample ballot booklet in the mail. I think that's something very familiar to everybody. But if you'd like to use the interactive sample ballot, you can go to our lavote.net website. You can look up your sample ballot. You complete it on your mobile device or your home computer. After you're done, you generate something called a poll pass, which you see in that middle picture. Once you get to a vote center, you get your paper ballot, you insert that into the ballot marking device. You take your poll pass and you scan it, and it instantly pre-populates your ballot. It's a really expedited process for people to be in and out in just a few minutes. I personally used this in the primary. I checked in. We have a vote center here at our office at the registrar's headquarters in Norwalk. So on Monday before the election, I went downstairs, I checked in, I got my paper ballot, I inserted to the ballot marking device, and then I scanned my poll pass, and I was done in about 2 minutes later. So it's a really quick, expedited process. You can make changes if you want. It's not your vote. If you lose your poll pass, no one can take your vote. It's just an electronic version of your booklet. Okay. Couple more slides here. If you do want to vote in person, we will be using social distancing, and this would include if you're dropping off your ballot. Anyone entering a vote center will need to wear a face covering or a mask. We will have masks available for anyone who is interested, who doesn't bring one and they would like to vote in person. Election workers will have protective gloves and masks on. We will actually have gloves available for members of the public, but it is not required to wear gloves. There will be hand sanitizer at the entrance and exit for voters to use. Everything will be socially distanced. So we will have the line separated. The check-in line, for example, will be separated by 6 feet, and our voting devices will also be separated by 6 feet. After every use, we will wipe down the ballot marking device and also the e-poll book, since voters will be touching those devices and interacting with them. A little bit on the timeline. So we started sending out sample ballot booklets on September 24th. On October 5th, which was the beginning of this week, we started sending out vote by mail ballots, although I think some were sent out a little bit earlier and people got their vote by mail ballot a little bit in advance. October 19th is the deadline to register to vote. Anyone registered by October 19th will be sent a vote by mail ballot. So if there's anyone you know who has yet to register or needs to update their address because they recently moved, we want to make sure that gets updated so we can get their vote by mail ballot over to them. October 24th is the first day that vote centers open. As I mentioned, it's that approximately 100, 110, 11-day vote centers. Then October 30th is when the remainder of the vote centers will open. And then November 3rd is election day, and then we're done. One quick note about vote centers and voter registration. If someone misses the registration deadline, they can still vote. They can show up in person and utilize something called conditional voter registration or same-day registration. And that allows someone to register to vote even on election day and vote. We will check their ballot. It is considered a conditional ballot. So we will check their ballot check their eligibility before counting their ballot. Assuming the voter is eligible, we will go ahead and count that. And we are also on all the social media networks. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. We have a lot of great information there. We really want to encourage everyone to share our information. In this day and age of misinformation and disinformation and fake news and all the other phrases that we hear about, what voters trust the most, what community members trust the most, is what comes from the county registrar's sites. The best way to counter all that is just share the accurate information. And again, like I mentioned at the beginning, everyone here can become ambassadors for the election to really help get that information out to our over 5.5 million eligible voters. So if you do want to email us, you can email at voterinfo@rrcc.lacounty.gov. And I think towards later in the program, we'll be able to do some questions. All right, thanks so much, everyone.
Great, thank you so much, Jeff. I am going to now bring in Kiana Asamanfar, who is the program manager for California Common Cause. California Common Cause is one of the founding members of our network and is active statewide, engaging voters and working with election officials to advance California's democracy. Kiana, thank you for joining us and for sharing your experience partnering with LA County.
Thanks so much, Katie, and thanks everyone for joining today. My name is Kiana and I'm with California Common Cause. For those of you who aren't familiar with Common Cause, our mission is to make sure that government is representative of and looks like the communities that they serve. And so one of our key program areas is voting in elections, and more specifically, making sure expanding voter access, improving the voter experience, and making sure that voters are educated and engaged in elections. And we do that through a number of ways. Legislation is a big focus for us, policy implementation, as well as research. So I think some research that we've done that relates to this upcoming election, we actually initiated a research project with the Center for Social Innovation at UC Riverside to really explore the specific key messages that resonate with voters in this upcoming election in light of the pandemic, in light of the multiple changes that are going on in elections, both in LA County and statewide. And so we conducted focus groups in partnership with many of our partners, some of which who are on this call, to explore key messages that resonate with voters, specifically low propensity voters, voters who are limited English proficient. And I think one of the key takeaways from those focus groups was the importance of trusted messengers. And who is a trusted messenger? I think local officials, respected community organizations, family and friends. Those were all sources that focus group participants identified as key sources of information for them as it relates to elections. So I think in listing that out, that includes everyone on this call who's joined us today. I think a lot of us are trusted messengers, either in our professional capacity or in a personal capacity in our communities. And as Jeff mentioned, he'd like everyone on this call to be an ambassador. I think by joining this call and learning about how to vote in LA County, that makes us all ambassadors for this upcoming election. So just wanted to highlight the importance of that role. With that said, I think there are a couple things that I wanted to highlight from what Jeff shared that I think are particularly relevant in this upcoming election in LA County. One is the many changes that have taken effect this year in LA County as it relates to our elections. And as Jeff shared, a number of those changes already rolled out in March, but some people didn't vote in March and some people didn't hear about the changes in March. And so they're hearing about these changes perhaps for the first time, and they're really experiencing it for the first time, whether that's opening their mailbox and getting their vote by mail ballot for the first time ever, or realizing that they have the ability to vote at any location in the county, which is new this year. So just to kind of highlight some of those changes, countywide voting, with the launch of vote centers and the transition away from polling places, voters are no longer assigned to a single location on election day. They now have hundreds and hundreds of vote centers that they can choose from to cast a ballot in person. With the transition to vote centers, we also got the expansion of same-day registration. So now if a voter misses the voter registration deadline, they can visit any location in person to register for the first time or update their registration at a vote center and be able to cast a ballot in the same day. So this service is, again, available at all vote centers during the early vote period as well as on election day. Another major change this year was the new ballot marking device that rolled out and the county's transition away from the IncoVote system to the ballot marking device, which, as Jeff pointed out, has a number of key features for voters with disabilities, the ability to reflect the ballot in multiple languages that are offered in LA County, and really offering voters a streamlined voting experience when they visit vote centers. So that's another thing that voters might be unfamiliar with and are learning about for the first time. And last but not least, of course, the expansion of vote by mail. We've had a number of voters in LA County who have voted historically by mail, but a good chunk of voters who have never received a ballot by mail. And so I think with the pandemic and all the changes that are taking place, we'll see a lot of first-time vote by mail voters this year. So making sure that they're educated about that option and educated about how to mark their ballot and when and where to drop it off, I think is really important. So with that said, I think acknowledging those changes that are taking place this year, I think it's really important to emphasize in voter education and when talking to our communities, the multiple options that voters have to cast a ballot in the upcoming election. One, of course, is vote by mail. As you all might have heard, ballots are already dropping in LA County. I actually just got mine yesterday and I was very excited about it. So vote by mail is an option for every registered voter, and you should be looking in your mailbox this week for it if you haven't received it already. I think this is a great option, and I think emphasizing the convenience that it provides voters to cast a ballot from the comfort of their own home is important, and also emphasizing too that ballots this year have 2 extra weeks to arrive at their county elections office compared to past cycles. So for voters who might be concerned about the reliability of mail, I think emphasizing that their ballot has quite a few days to arrive and be counted is important. Tracking services have proven to be very effective in improving trust in vote by mail. So the ballot tracks feature that Jeff highlighted, I think is really important for us to share with our communities and gives voters important updates about where their ballot is in the processing process, which again improves trust in vote by mail. And then I think it's also important to emphasize the many options for return. Just because you received your ballot by mail doesn't mean you have to send it back by mail. There's about 400 drop boxes across the county that voters can use, and they can always walk it into a vote center to drop it off. Lastly, I think emphasizing the option for voters to vote in person at a vote center is really important. At these vote centers, people have access to critical voting services. Same-day registration is one that we talked about. The ability to use an accessible machine to mark and cast your ballot, and also to receive language support and resources with the availability of bilingual poll workers. So I think advertising that in-person option is something that voters might need or voters simply might prefer. The last message that I just wanted to emphasize is the ability to vote early. Again, ballots have already dropped, and so voting has already begun. It's also worth emphasizing that in-person voting options are widely available in LA County in just 16 days. When 11-day vote centers will open, we'll have about 120 11-day vote centers that can begin to accommodate voters 2 Saturdays from now. So those are some of the key messages that I just wanted to highlight. And with that said, I think we'll go ahead and move into Q&A with Jeff. So if you haven't already, please drop your questions in the Q&A section in the chat. And let's see if we have any questions to start out. So let's see. Astrid highlighted a question about how people wanted to know about the reliability of vote by mail. Can we start with that, Jeff?
Sure. So as mentioned, vote by mail is a very secure way to vote. It is very reliable. As long you need to make sure you sign your vote by mail ballot. We check every signature of a vote by mail ballot that is returned to us. And some people have expressed concern that, what if they forget, or what if their signature is out of date? What would happen in that case? We do send letters out to let voters know if you forgot to sign your vote by mail ballot, you'll get a second chance to correct that. So we will send a letter. We do stress signing it because we don't want to get to that point where we do have to send those letters out. But if that happens, and then also if there's this mismatched signature, that's the term that we use, meaning your signature doesn't match. It goes through a few steps here before we send a letter off. We want to make sure it goes through a couple different levels of people to verify and compare the signature. But if for whatever reason we determine that the signature does not match, we will send that off to the voter to ensure that they get an opportunity to correct their signature.
Thanks, Jeff. And yeah, relating to signatures, I think, again, just plugging the ballot tracks system, voters who register for that will be notified if there's an issue with their signature that they need to correct. So again, it's a great option for folks who are voting by mail. There's a question about the security and safety of ballot drop boxes, and also how often are those ballots collected? Yes,
so we will pick ballots up every 72 hours for the first 20 days, and then the final 10 days before the election, they will be picked up on a daily basis. So we want to ensure people that they are picked up fairly regularly, and the frequency does increase as we get closer to the election. And a lot of that is really more for our administrative needs as well, because we'll be getting a lot of ballots in, and we want to keep a constant stream of ballots coming down to our vote by mail facility. I know there is a lot of concern out there. They see the boxes out on their own. They worry, could someone, steal those drop boxes? They're all bolted to the ground if they're out on the pavement or exposed to the public without someone watching them. There are a few that are inside facilities, and so there'll be people watching them for sure if they're inside a facility. But the ones you'll drive around and you'll see them outside, they are bolted to the ground. They're also designed to be resistant. So the material is essentially graffiti resistant. If someone tried to mark it up or damage it, it resists those efforts. The slot on the vote by mail drop box is pretty narrow, so pretty hard to put something inside other than an envelope. And just for reference, in the primary, we had over 200 vote by mail drop boxes out in the community, and we didn't have an issue with any of them. There was no vandalism. No one tried to steal any of them. No one tried to break into any of them. So we're not anticipating any issues. A lot of cities have alerted their local authorities just to, if while they're driving around, just to make sure they're aware of where the drop boxes are, keep an eye on them. But again, we're not anticipating any issues with them, and cities have taken some additional steps just to safeguard their own drop boxes.
Thanks, Jeff. Going back to the signature, somebody asked about the inclusion of their middle initial. Their regular signature includes their middle initial, but the name on their ballot does not. Do you advise them to sign their ballot?
I mean, the best thing is to sign exactly as you've registered. If you've registered through a paper form, it would be the signature that is on the paper form. We scan that into our system and we place that in. Or if you registered via online, they pull the signature from the DMV. And so the initial comparison is the most recent registration. So if you've moved around a lot and you've re-registered multiple times, we're using the most recent signature. However, in our process, if for whatever reason there's not an initial match because the signature differs, we have the ability to go back through the history of your signatures through all your different times that you've registered, and we can look to see, is there another signature that this would compare to? So if you left out the middle initial, but everything else matched, we would most likely count that. But again, the safeguard is that you'll ultimately get a letter and notification if for some reason we find that it doesn't match. I guess that's there's a number of factors to consider, but that gives a general sense.
Great. And there's also a question again about what happens if somebody forgets to sign their ballot. Can you explain what happens there?
Yes, so if you forget to sign, we will send out a letter to let you know that you forgot to sign, and we want to give voters an opportunity to sign that letter, send it in, and we'll go ahead and count their ballot.
Great. There's a question about the difference between 11-day vote centers and 5-day vote centers. Can you explain the difference?
Sure. The only difference is the length of time. So we wanted to have some open starting 10 days before the election, but the majority of people who do decide to vote in person will do that as we get closer to election day. So that's why we really ramp up as we get closer. But yeah, that's really the only difference.
Right. So basically some vote centers will open on October 24th and be open all the way through election day, and then more vote centers will open. Is it the Friday before election day?
Correct.
Through election day.
Yeah, you can vote in your costume on Halloween.
Oh yeah, that's right. There's a question about the ballot passbook, the interactive sample ballot feature that you shared.
Sure.
Share how folks can access that and how that works.
Sure. So if you go to our website, it's isb.lavote.net, which is to specifically access the ISB. But if you can't remember, just go to our website, lavote.net, and there'll be a link on the site that will take you to that. And it's an electronic version of your sample ballot booklet. It just has your selections based on your precinct. So it doesn't have your personal information on the ISB. It just brings up your ballot for that precinct. You make all your selections, and then you generate a poll pass, which is that barcode or QR code. And you take that with you. You can keep it stored on your mobile device, or you can print it out and take it with you. You don't need a special app or anything like that. You go directly to our website. There's nothing to download, and the information isn't stored on your mobile device. It's simply almost like a screenshot picture of that barcode. And that lets the device know, the ballot marking device, once you get to the point of voting where you're ready to enter your selections, you'll scan it and it'll pre-populate your selections. And then the one thing I always like to emphasize, because sometimes people fill it out 2 or 3 weeks in advance, we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to correct and print your ballot and cast it.
There's a question about what happens if somebody receives their ballot, only votes for president, for example, and doesn't vote for the rest of their ballot. Is there any recourse?
So once you cast your ballot, it's cast. You can vote for as much or as little as you want. Some people only want to vote for president, and some people want to fill out the entire ballot. and then anywhere in between. So it's really up to the voter.
And there's a question about when folks should expect to see their vote by mail ballot if they haven't received it yet.
So they are going out momentarily. We started sending out at the beginning of the week. And actually, I think even a couple days earlier, some people got their ballot over the weekend. But I don't know if you've ever had to send 5.5 million pieces of mail. It does take a little time for all of that to get out into the community. I would say give it until probably early next week. And then if you still haven't received it, give us a call and we will, we can always send a replacement if for some reason you missed it. One thing to note is for voters who have never voted by mail before or not used to voting by mail, some people overlook that. They don't know what the vote by mail packet looks like, and some voters miss that in the mail. So just keep an eye out, or if someone mentions to you like that they never got it, just let people know, what the packet looks like. It's from our office, and but we can always send a replacement if someone misplaced it or they believe they didn't receive it.
Great. And I'll just say it again, ballot tracks, we'll let you know what the status is of your ballot. I signed up for the service a couple months ago, and I got a text and an email over the weekend and then received my ballot just a handful of days later. So it'll let you know when your ballot was sent out.
Great.
Let's see. I think those are most of the questions that we had. There will be another Q&A section later for folks who didn't have their questions answered. There's a question that asks how many options can a person vote? I'm not clear about that question. If you could elaborate, that would be great. Oh, let's see, there are a few more questions coming in. Is there a deadline that all these ballots must be counted, including those who received a letter?
Yes, so there are deadlines for everything. It's all written out in the election code. As long as you postmarked your ballot by election day, it will count. We have 17 days, as I mentioned in my presentation, up to 17 days to receive your ballot. The election is actually not certified until 30 days after election day. That's the time that California allows counties to do their audits and cross checks and all the different post-election activities, which does include processing vote by mail. Okay, we may have a few provisional ballots, although under the vote center model, we don't have too many provisional ballots, conditional voter registration. So there's a lot of activity that goes on after the election. So technically the results on election night are unofficial, and nothing is official until we certify, which is 30 days after the election. And then within that time will be when people need to respond to the different letters that we've sent out. They have certain timelines attached to them as well.
Great. Yeah, I think it's just worth emphasizing election day, 8 p.m. If you're planning on returning your vote by mail ballot, take it to a drop box or take it to a vote center. I had a friend who marked her ballot on election day in the primary and was running to the post office. I think she dropped it in the box, but it wasn't postmarked until the following day, and her ballot was rejected for that reason. So if you are, running into the last few hours of election day, be sure to just walk your ballot in, or leave it at a drop box, or better yet, take it to a post office that morning or several days before election day if you can. Let's see, I think that's all the time we have for Q&A right now. So we're going to move it over to the next section, and hopefully we'll get a chance to answer some of the remaining questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kiana and Jeff. We're now going to transition to part 2 of our program on voter education resources. Joining us for that is Karen Diaz from the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, also known as CHIRLA. CHIRLA works directly with voters to ensure they know their voting rights and voting options. Karen is the electoral field manager and is going to share how CHIRLA uses county election materials in their own voter education efforts.
Hi everyone, my name is Karen Diaz. Thank you so much to the Future of California Elections for inviting the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, also known as CHIRLA, to be part of the webinar today. Our organization is a statewide organization with national impact. And our focus is to ensure that we have a nation that is fully inclusive of immigrants. And as part of our work is to ensure that our community it's getting out the vote. And a lot of the community that we often work with are Latinos, first-time voters, people who don't often are included as part of the political process. A lot of the candidates and political campaigns don't often have the time to reach out to our community. And as being part of this community, I know that what are the needs. So our department reaches out to English learners, immigrants, people who had gone through the naturalization process and are now for the first time voting. And we know that for this election, we had a lot of registration numbers, and a lot of the people from our community are the ones that are going to be taking part of this elections for the first time. And that is why our civic engagement department focuses a lot of the work that we do on a day-to-day basis on having, before the pandemic, face-to-face conversations with our voters. And now we have transitioned to a new way of contacting voters. And we're talking to the voters on the phone. And we have transitioned to doing a lot of radio, TV ads, and get out the vote. We leverage our social media. And on our Facebook platforms, we reach out to voters through our Spanish speakers, and on our Twitters, we are always sharing information and resources. And I know that is something that the Register of Voters from LA County and Jeff, we work in partnership with them, and they provide us with a lot of translated materials. So that is how we leverage the partnerships with the registrar's office all across different counties, but specific for LA County, because this is the area where we have a bigger voter base, we rely really heavily, and that's where we have our deeper partnerships and the work that we're doing. So some of the things that we have done in past elections is we have taken our members to participate in mock elections, see the voting machines. Our members are fully aware of how to use the poll passes. So then when they go and talk to voters in their community, and although some of us are not able to vote ourselves, we can tell our family members or friends who live in our community how to go vote. This past election, we were actually passing some of these booklets that the LA County provided us. We passed over 5,000 of those voter booklets to our community members. We were explaining to them prior to the pandemic how voting was going to change for this upcoming election, how they didn't just have to rely on their usual polling place and now could vote at any voting center, whether it was closer to their home, closer to their workplace, closer to their school, or a location that they were passing by on the day of election, so that they didn't have to miss an election. And this has been some of the work that we have been doing through the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights. I think that what makes our program so special, and why I think the partnerships with the county are so important, is because whenever we feel like there's materials produced, or even before they go into production, we can talk to folks at the office of the county registrar and give them our input on certain translations to make sure that our community better understands them. I know that Kiana touched a little bit into this information, that when our community members receive information from trusted sources like Jeff Klein and the Register of Voters and community-based organizations like CHIRLA and many others, they are more likely to trust the information that comes their way. And I think that's why it's so important that as we're going into this election and whatever program your organization might be running, that you rely on the resources that are already available, so that there isn't any confusion on the voter side about what a drop-off box location is or how to vote by mail. And I think that's why we continue to use a glossary of terms and all of those resources, and we try to leverage it in our campaigns. Right now we have our Yo Soy California Voto campaign, and as part of our campaign, we are sharing those resources with our community. We have a hotline that we use, and in our hotline we get questions that get answered in Spanish and in many other languages. especially for our hotline that we have. We have an 800 number, 888-624-4752. That hotline receives a lot of questions about where to find your polling location, and all the links that we use are resources from the Register of Voters, because we want to make sure that our voters in our community get the most accurate information. And with that, I'm just gonna go back into the taking some of the questions. So if you do have any questions about the work that we're doing and how we work in partnership with the Register of Voters, go ahead and drop them off on the Q&A section. We're gonna keep the chat for more conversations. So if you wanna have any conversation, go ahead and keep it on the chat. And I think some of the questions that we have coming up, I'm gonna bring them up to Jeff to answer. I see that some of the things that came up are, do you see an image posted on the mail ballot envelope somewhere so folks could share it to familiarize themselves and watch it? That's for you, Jeff. If you guys have any images of like what the mail ballot is going to look like, so folks can familiarize themselves with, if you can share with us.
Karen, Jeff is going to do a quick presentation on the voter resources, and then we'll do the Q&A.
Okay, great. So we do have a lot of resources on our website. We have a very robust page with a number of different resources. It's contained on the lavote.net website. So there's also a lot of other resources just about our department and services that we offer. I'm going to show everyone this page. So let me go ahead and share my screen. 1 second here. All right.
I can transfer you to human resources. Maybe they can help you.
1 second here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. So does everyone see that page?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm trying to adjust my. Okay, great. So when you log on to our lavote.net website, this is what you'll see, and there's a scrolling banner on top. When you actually click the one that's all, it's the yellow one, it's got all the different information. There's a number of different resources. It takes you to a summary page that looks like this. And this has all this information about checking your registration status, registering to vote, accessing your sample ballot. And so you can click around. The ISB is what I had mentioned, and someone had asked where they could find it. It's lavote.net/ISB, or you can just click it from this page as well. This is just a really good overall resource page. So a few things to note about it. There's also a lookup tool. So if you go to find about vote by mail, you can find a vote by mail drop box, and when you click that, it brings up this lookup tool, and you can type in any address. So if I typed in Norwalk, let's just go with the city of Norwalk, which is where I'm at, and it shows the different areas close to Norwalk. You see our office here. Of course, we're a Dropbox location. We have one right in front, but all the different Dropbox locations. We've targeted a lot of metro stations just for reference. So we've been partnering with Metrolink and Metro a lot just to make it available. So you can really type in an address as well, or you can type in a city, you can type in a street, any sort of information you want to list here. You can also, if you go back to that page I was mentioning, you can also look up in-person voting. So there's information here about in-person voting, a lot of what I had mentioned before, safe voting and so forth. But you can also find a vote center, and I have it queued up here. I looked one up by typing in the name, Hotel Figueroa in downtown LA. They're a vote center, and if you click on it, you can see it. Also on all of these, you can scroll out on the map, and you can see, you can scroll in, you can scroll out. I'm using the wheel on my mouse. There's also the zoom in, zoom out here. And you will be able to see the vote centers, and you can even get directions to the different vote centers. And the same thing would apply to the Dropbox. You can toggle on the 11-day and the 5-day location. So if you want to filter it out that way. Staples Center, as mentioned, is a vote center, and you can see the hours here. It says it on the hours on the left side there, but also you can see on the screen it lists the hours as well. So a lot of really accessible information. And then also during the election, we will have a new feature, which will be a wait time tool. So it'll show you how long the wait is at different vote centers. And that's something that will go live once voting begins. So just scrolling through, you can see some of the ones near Hotel Figueroa, which is in downtown LA, the Biltmore, and so forth. A lot of great opportunities to vote. Many schools are available and so forth. And then on that other, let me go back to that main page. We have something called the Mobile Vote Center program. That's something that we run for specific for areas that are, these are sort of one-day locations that we move them around. These are designed for people who are healthcare or public health workers. Primarily, we're targeting communities or areas where there's large numbers of people gathering them and they can't necessarily get away to go vote in person. So it's a service that we're making available to certain groups within our population that need that access. So a lot of other information. I won't get too far in the weeds here. It's a great place to explore, or if you're looking for any other information. If you are working on if you're working on a campaign or you want to look up voter participation, you might have remembered in the past, we don't have it up yet, it's not live, but for the voter participation tool, you'll be able to go to this website and you'll look and see who has voted around LA County, and that replaces the street index, which many people are familiar with. That used to hang at vote centers, and campaigns a lot of times would see if their supporters have shown up. So as we get closer to election day, just emphasizing that as something that will evolve and change. So please feel free to check back as these different activities start being implemented and starting up for the public. All right. That's it.
Thank you so much for sharing all those resources, Jeff. I know that I definitely use those resources. I know that the website for the LA County Register of Voters, I have it saved as one of my favorite pages because I'm constantly accessing it on a day-to-day basis. So if you can share with us a little bit more about walking in our ballot. I know some folks have questions about the different ways that they can turn in their ballot and return it, and do they have to stand in line if they already filled it out?
Sure, and one thing I wanted to share, is our digital toolkit. I forgot to mention that. There's a digital toolkit that we made. I apologize. This was actually supposed to be the last part of what I wanted to show. So let me actually bring that back up. So we have something called a digital toolkit, and this has a lot of resources. I believe Astrid can go ahead and post the link to the chat. There's a link to go to, and it's got a login and password. It's not anything secretive or anything that we're trying to keep. It's pretty much a soft password. We just didn't want to put just a link out in the public, but it's available to anyone who can use this information. It's got a lot of really good information. This voting 101 information is something that a lot of organizations have shared. And so information that you can use that we wanted to make available, for example, here, vote by mail, how to register to vote. So this is great information, different ways to vote. So this is great for the public if you want to post this on social media or you want to send it out to your email list. But there's also a number of other items here, logos, if you're looking for various digital logos for anyone who is looking to do some additional social media promotion. Oops, let me go back here. Let's see. A few other things, graphics. So a lot of really good information. We really could get lost in a lot of this information. It's really the first time we rolled out this digital toolkit and made it available for widespread use. But we put this together because so many people are doing such great work promoting the election so much. We wanted everyone to have the same resources. And so this is available. So I know Astrid is going to, if she hasn't done so already, she's going to post that in the chat. And feel free to look around on it and share our information.
Thank you, Jeff, for sharing. And I know that you showed us where to find information on the different ways that we can vote, but can you talk a little bit more about the different ways that voters are going to be able to cast their ballot this November? And is it going to be something that we're going to have to be standing in line if we already voted by mail and we just want to walk it in?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up. And I've heard it a lot at when I've done presentations in other organizations. People feel that, oh, if I already voted by mail, I think last time there was some confusion on whether or not they had to stand in line. If you're ready to go and you have your vote by mail ballot signed and sealed and you're just dropping it off, you don't have to stand in line. You can walk right up. There'll be a drop box near a ballot box near the entrance to the vote center. You can just drop it off in that ballot box. The line is really for people checking in to do in-person voting services. So want to make sure people are aware of that. Then also one thing we're just really trying to promote is early voting. The vote center model is really fantastic and great because it creates a period of voting. And so we're really trying to encourage people to use the earlier part of the period of voting rather than everyone waiting to election day. And it's something we're really focusing on for this election because in March we had some lines. I don't think that's a secret to anybody. And so we really want to try to encourage people, if you're ready to cast your vote, mail it in when you're ready to cast it. Don't wait till the last minute. If you're ready to vote and you want to vote in person, come on the weekend or even during one of the 11-day or the really early parts of that voting period, just so we can get more people in and ballots in earlier rather than waiting to the last minute.
Thank you. Yeah, and I know that my organization, at least, we've been making calls since early September, and I think that was one of the questions that we asked, can we count on you to vote early? Yeah. And this week we're transitioning to making calls and just letting voters know, can we count on you to vote now? So we are sharing a lot of the messages that you're putting out there, and thank you for, just including all of that. I think another one of the questions that came up is folks want to know if you're coordinating with any nursing homes or long-term care facilities for people who need those options for voting, either drop-off locations or ballot delivery.
Yeah, so we are coordinating with a number of facilities that have populations that are not as mobile. We have something called a Flex Vote Center program, and that's where we provide 2 or 3 ballot marking devices, and we maybe put them in the lobby of a independent living center or another type of facility. And what we do is we provide 2 election workers, and the facility partners with us to provide 1 election worker. And we have about 100 of those for this election during that early voting period. So 100 total throughout the entire period, not just not every day, but it'll be, and those are really out, that's 100 in addition to all the vote centers and so forth. So we are trying to make sure that the Flex program is really robust and used as widespread as possible. So that's something that we do partner with those types of facilities on.
Thank you. And what about, a lot of folks are concerned that there's going to be such high numbers, and you mentioned how we have such a big county. Is there any concerns about being able to process a large amount of ballots that are going to be casted this November? And especially with the deadline of certifying the presidential election, what is the county thinking about doing?
Yeah, so we have to get it done within 30 days. There's no way to, that's pretty as direct as it gets. We have to get it done by the time that the law requires us to finish the election. And it's always a really big task for us to certify the election on time. We work very long hours. We have night shifts that come in. We work weekend. We work on Thanksgiving. We work all through the 30-day period to ensure that the election is done and we finish everything on time and it's done accurately, and we don't rush through it where we don't want mistakes. We don't want anything done incorrectly. So we have a very large staff that works on that. We have people here till 1, 2 in the morning, many nights working on it and coming back at 7 in the morning, not the same people, but people working late, and another crew coming in starting early in the morning. And so it's something that we just have to get done. So no concerns, it's just a big task, and we all really work as one team here to make sure that happens.
That's great. And I know that one of the things we're thinking about right now at Shoreline, I don't know if this is some of your concerns about poll workers. I know we announced that to our staff yesterday and we invited them to sign up. Are you still thinking about getting poll workers to sign up? And if so, when is the deadline so that the people in the webinar can invite their networks to sign up if needed?
Sure. So there's no deadline. We don't want, if you realize last minute you decide you want to sign up to be an election worker, we'd rather have you sign up than not sign up. Things change last minute. We don't know in this unpredictable environment what happens in a week or two. Maybe, you know, there's some changes in public sentiment about going out into the public and people might feel differently. So we want to encourage people to sign up. We have gotten a very large interest in people wanting to be election workers. We use close to 20,000 people to run an election. So we want to encourage anyone interested to still sign up. We still really want to have people sign up. And in the end, if it turns out that it's not needed, that's okay. At least you signed up and you're in our system and, you know, might be used for the next election. But we almost never turn away someone who might be interested in working unless for whatever reason they have scheduling conflicts and things like that. One thing to note, I think, because we've had such a large outpouring, a lot of people think, oh, I can just work election day, but we need multi-day commitments. So there's going to be people who realize, oh, I can't do that schedule. So please, if you're able to work multiple days during that voting period, we want you to sign up and encourage that.
Great. I think that's really important because when we did send out the email, we were like, the deadline is this Friday. So it's really great to keep in mind. And what are your thoughts on, I know we sort of had this conversation before, but for other folks, if you have friends or family members that don't fully speak English, are they welcome to be poll workers? Are they of any use for you?
Absolutely. And actually, I'm kind of glad you put that deadline because we do want people to sign up sooner rather than later. So maybe that got some people to sign up sooner when they might have delayed. So thanks for doing that. That's great. So yes. We do need people who have language abilities. We serve voters in many different languages throughout LA County. Language skills are very crucial to being able to provide excellent service to our voters in the languages that someone may feel more comfortable voting in, receiving assistance in, whatever the case is. And also the requirements to become an election worker are you have to be 18 years of age, you have to be a registered voter, California resident, or you can be a lawful permanent resident status holder or green card holder. And the individuals who are green card holders, they can still serve as election workers. There's some slight restrictions on the roles that they can play at the vote centers, but overall they can serve as part of the election board for a vote center. And that's a great way for someone who maybe is not yet eligible to vote. They can still participate in the election and still help out and be a contributing member.
That's great. I definitely know there's a lot of people that are interested in signing up in our network. So if anyone in your networks is interested in signing up, you heard Jeff that you can sign up. And can we go back and touch a little bit more on the drop boxes? I think people are still wondering how often do these get collected? I know you mentioned the safety component that nobody's touching them and that they're located in safe places, but should people expect to be their ballots collected daily or weekly, or are you doing it monthly or until election day?
So it's every 72 hours for the first 20 days. And then when we get to the final 10 days, it'll be every day, be picked up every 24 hours. And then we do have some flexibility where if we feel the volume is really going up and we want to move back the 24-hour pickup, we can do that. But that's the plan as of right now.
Great. And I know that as a community-based organizations, and I know we've been doing this work for a long time, but for community organizations that are doing this for the first time because they're concerned about the pandemic and getting their members out to vote, what would be some key resources that you would highlight that they promote as they're trying to inform their communities about elections?
So I think the toolkit is definitely something that should be utilized. I think that the number one resource that I would promote is vote by mail because that is the main voting option that most voters, I believe, will be using this election. So I think that and different ways to vote, that's another piece in the Voting 101 information. So just want to make sure that those two things are, I guess, the two pieces that I would highlight.
Great. And what can communities like myself do if we find ourselves in need of any resources that we cannot find in the toolkit, or if the toolkit we're looking through and we can't find anything? What should we do? Who can we reach out to at your office?
You can reach out to me, and then I'll put my email address, or maybe ask to put my email address in the chat, and I'm happy to touch base with anybody who wants additional assistance or wants to see how maybe they can partner a little bit with us.
I know that one of the questions that often get asked at our organization is that there were really long lines. So what is something that we can tell our members who are afraid of going to vote because of the long lines on election day? Like, what resources are available for us to, like, in addition to the early vote, but we know we're not going to be able to get to everyone. So, you know, what have you guys been doing for messaging, and what can we use as messaging on our social media?
So we will have the new feature I had mentioned. The new feature is looking at the wait times at different vote centers. So if you're trying to decide which vote center to go to, you'll have an opportunity to see maybe there's a few near you. You might decide to use the one with the lower wait time. The other item I would use is the interactive sample ballot. That can be completed even when you're standing in line. So you're ready to go once you get your ballot, and you can get in and out of voting. Don't wait till election day, which I know is something that is being promoted, but that's the number one thing, is we really want to encourage people not to wait till election day. But we know for a lot of people that it feels like voting, right? It feels like a traditional day for voting. So we have made some changes in our processes from the March primary, and we're confident that that will eliminate some of the challenges that we did have in the March primary. But all these things sort of factor into sort of the lines and how many people show up on election day and so forth. So just to encourage people, I think that's, you know, we can all work together on that and just try to let people know you have a lot of options to vote. You don't have to wait.
Thank you. And let me go back into talking about the poll workers, just because this has been a question that a lot of people have. I know some people sign up very early on and they still haven't heard back. When should they expect to hear back? What's the timeline, and what's the process like? Should they be applying again, or do you not want double applications?
Yeah, that's a great question. And because we've had such an outpouring of interest, they're trying to make their way through all the information. You can contact the voter info email. Well, that's probably not the best one. Let me follow up with that, and maybe I can have Astrid or someone promote that information on what's the best course of action, what's the approximate time turnaround. I don't know, to be honest, I don't know how long it takes to get a call, or what the anticipated time. So let me find out those details, and we'll send that out, rather than giving everyone the wrong info.
Okay, and for voters, I know that we still are expecting to get to more voter registrations this year, like even after October 19th. What about people that request their vote by mail late? Are they gonna be able to receive it in time for November 3rd? And if I register on October 19th, when should I expect my vote by mail ballot to arrive at my home?
Yes, so as long as you're registered by October 19th, you will get a vote by mail ballot. It usually goes out within a few days of receiving your registration. So it takes a little time for us to get the information into our system. Then we let our vendor know if there's new registrants, and then that gets mailed out. So it does take a few days to turn around. That's why we always stress, you know, take care of everything as early as possible. You know, I do want to assure everyone, as long as you're registered by October 19th, you will get your ballot by mail. We're sending them out up to October 27th. So.
And I do have one final question. I know that I often go to the website, and I often look at it in English, but I know how to speak English and Spanish. But for my Spanish speakers and for others, language speakers. Some of the pages, when you click on the link, I know they're not the exact same translation and they don't have the exact same resources. So what can voters in different languages expect when reaching out for information in the website? And if it's not the same information, where can they find the rest of the resources?
Yeah, so we do have a multilingual hotline. If you go to our contact information on our website, there's multilingual assistance. And so that's something you can definitely utilize. We have a whole phone bank set up to help multilingual voters. In all languages that we serve individuals in LA County, we will have someone who speaks that language here available. The one thing I want to note is all of our website material, including the digital toolkit, it does translate into multiple languages. About the digital toolkit, I'll mention it here since we're talking about multilingual services. So the site may look like it doesn't translate, but when you actually bring up the flyers, those are translated. So just want to make sure no one is thrown off if they're looking for those translated materials. And then also just a little bit more on both multilingual services. We target specific languages at different vote centers. So in communities that have a larger population that speak such languages, we will have election workers that are fluent in those languages, but every vote center also has a Skype feature on a tablet where voters can Skype in with a person in our office at the vote center, and it's a three-way Skype. So it's the voter, the translator, and the election worker, and they can provide assistance through this Skype type feature at vote centers as well. So we have a lot of options for voters. And then lastly, our ballot marking device. In most of the languages that we provide translations in, the ballot marking device also translates. So a lot of options. And in addition, the Skype feature is also available in ASL, American Sign Language as well. You can get assistance in American Sign Language.
Thank you for all those resources. And I really did like it when I heard about the Skype feature.
Yeah.
That feature just got a lot of our voters really excited because I think they face enough limitations trying to get to the polls and finding information in their language for monolingual folks. So that has been a really great feature that a lot of people are looking forward to using. And with that, we just want to thank you, Jeff, for taking the time to answer a lot of the questions and just helping us out and sharing all the really great resources that we can have available during this election.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, you guys. We are now nearing the end of our programming, and we're going to transition into a network discussion on strategies for voter education, led by Astrid Ochoa, Executive Director of FOS.
Hey everyone, that was a great presentation by Jeff, and thank you to Karen and to Kiana for going through all of those key points and highlights. Voting in LA is different, not just because of the pandemic, but as we heard, there's a lot of voting options that LA was already transitioning to. And now with the pandemic, creating that voter information and how to disseminate information to voters to make sure that they feel safe for voting is really important. And so that is what this network discussion is about. We are in challenging times. We have not lived through a pandemic before, yet alone had a presidential election in a pandemic. And so we're really all learning together. And that's what the purpose of this network discussion is. In the registration, for this event, we asked you to identify what you think are the biggest challenges. And so I was going to start with those questions to get this space discussion started. And I was going to invite back all of our presenters, Karen, Kiana, and Jeff. We're not giving them a break. We're going to continue getting answers because I know that that's what this is about, and that's why all of you have continued to stay with us through this event. So we're going to go ahead and just take questions through the chat. You can actually have a raise hand feature in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and we can unmute you so that we can make this more of a discussion. So as you all get, as all of our participants get their bearings with the chat, we wanted to go ahead and kick off strategies. So the conversation is strategies, and we've heard Kiana and Karen both talk about those strategies, and Jeff as well. But let's tackle the first one, which is how do we get people to vote early? LA County has over 5 million voters. And we know that it's going to be a challenge if everybody waits until election day to vote. So let's get into nuts and bolts of what are key points in communication that you all are using to disseminate that message. And anyone can take it.
I think just emphasizing that the option is available to voters is a start. I know extended early voting is new in LA County. We've had weekend voting in the last cycle, but traditionally voters are used to voting on election day. So really just advertising the availability of that option, really trying to make a splash on the first day when voting opens on the 24th, I think is important. I did, before my role in Common Cause, I did work in Nevada in the 2016 election, and they had countywide voting and extended early voting as well. And what organizations did was plan in-person events and kind of try to get their communities to vote together on a single day. I do think in the pandemic, there's obviously a bit of a constraint there, but I think, trying to mobilize folks to get together and vote at the same vote center on a given day really helps bring a sense of community and bring excitement to the voting process. So I'd love to hear if groups are already planning something like that, or if there's something potentially in the works like that for LA County.
Mm-hmm. And I want to say, if you are just calling in, you can email your questions to hello@futurecaelections.org. So Karen, I know you all do a lot of direct outreach. What are some key points that you're trying to emphasize to encourage early voting? Oh, I'm sorry, you're muted, I believe.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So for our organization, it's actually having an event this evening. We're going to have a ballot party. We're going to have singers. We're going to have a DJ, Las Cafeteras, and we're going to have Dolores Huerta, our icon. And we're going to be walking folks through how to fill in their ballot. We have over 300 people RSVP this evening as part of the Million Voter Project, our coalition organization in Chirla. And there's a lot of people, we're driving calls to voters, and I think I touched a little bit on this when I was talking earlier, that one of our questions when we're phone banking is the past few weeks was, can we count on you to vote early? Now we're transitioning to a message this week, can we count on you to vote now? We give them their different options, and we want to make sure that they know that they receive their ballots, that they can start filling them out. But in addition to that, we're leveraging our social media platforms. We have a weekly TV show on our Facebook called Chirla en tu casa, Chirla at your home. And it's like a little bit of like chismets, like, we're telling a little bit of gossip and how we can make voting easy. And each week we're doing a different segment of voting and walking up until election. So we started with like different ways of voting. And last week we talked about how to register to vote. We're talking about National Citizenship Day. So, using these different platforms, we're using our Twitter and our Instagram, which are platforms that often our youth are the ones following us in there, and putting the English messages there. I know that we also had a partnership and we did some radio and TV buys that are doing GOTV messaging on voting early, and it's going to be transitioning throughout the week. So the same plan that the registered voters use is that we start with vote early, we switch to the vote by mail, and then we're going to switch it with how you can vote in person when we get closer to election day. And we're going to be continuing doing this all the way through election day.
Great. And Jeff, I actually had a little bit of a different question if I want to pivot, unless you wanted to add anything to the vote early strategy.
Yeah, I wanted to add something a little bit that the theme that I picked up on starting since the primary, and something that I've been talking about with organizations. I think a lot of people moving to the vote center model is a much more convenient way of voting, but not if everyone waits to election day. And I think it really takes a community effort to let people know that is available. There were a lot of voters I personally talked to who still weren't aware that there was early voting, even though we had a very robust media campaign. And I think, everyone here did a lot of work around that to promote it. But when you have over 5.5 million voters, and I think with a lot of the media attention and just how much talk there is. People sometimes tune out the election and they just want to cast their vote and not have to hear about anything about the election. So I think it really takes a community effort to keep reminding people that the voting period is an option. And one thing I've heard in the past is, people say, oh, I liked voting at my polling place because, I got to see my neighbors in my community. But you can actually create your own a new sense of community. And I think Karen really highlighted that, where you can have ballot parties where everyone goes and drops off their ballot together. Everyone goes down to the same vote center together, where you couldn't do that before because were restricted to a specific polling place. So you can meet up with families. You can meet up with your family members. You can go after church, go after temple. And everyone could go vote at a vote center near the church or near the temple or near your friend's house. And so I think rethinking how we approach elections as a community, it's something that's going to take a little time, but the more we spread that word and let people know, hey, I'm going on Sunday, I'm going on Saturday, how about you? That's something that I think could really over time help to start transitioning us to just a really more convenient way of voting.
Great. So now I'm going to shift the conversation to something that is a little more serious. There is this increased use of social media by everybody. Everybody has gone virtual. We can't be together. And so now we have parties on Zoom, on Facebook Live. Who'd have thought, right? A year ago that's what we would be looking towards. But that is how it's happening. And because everybody's online, there's also a big movement that is confusing folks and misinformation and malinformation. So how are you informing your networks of where to go, knowing that people are on Facebook more, that they are on Instagram and everywhere else to get information? So Jeff, what are resources where people can use for LA County to kind of fact check what's true about voting in LA County? And then Karen and Kiana, if you guys can answer how you all are messaging to your networks to check their facts as well. So go ahead, Jeff.
So the different pieces of information that I presented today, the toolkit, our election page resource on lavote.net, that has a lot of information. The best way to counter misinformation or bad information is go to our website, find out the rules around, what are the rules? Do I have to bring my vote by mail ballot if I want to vote in person? All of that is available on our website. And it is a little confusing, it's tough for voters because things change from county to county, things change from state to state. And sometimes certain rules from some states dominate the headlines nationally, and so people get confused on what the rules are. So everything we send out has clear directions, clear instructions on what you need to know in order to cast your ballot. So share our information, follow us on social media. We've been increasing the amount of information we put on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. So whatever your preferred social media network is, it's a great way to share that information. And that's what people trust. So, and then I think one of the challenges, especially during the pandemic, is we're getting 90% of our information from mostly digital, some television, some radio. And I think it's important to remember that there is a digital divide in our society and in our communities. And so there are people who maybe don't even have the access to the information that you're receiving. We kicked this off talking about ambassadors. You can be an ambassador for your community. People who work 2 jobs and don't have time to do all the research about the voting options. Well, you attended this forum today. Take that information back and inform your community members. Say, hey, I found out there are multiple options. I found out the vote by mail drop box is a secure method of voting. So use that information, and then I think we can all benefit for the better.
Thank you. And Karen and Kiana, how are you all approaching your networks about just double checking and fact checking information?
Yeah, I think going to the official sources, like Jeff mentioned, is really important. I would definitely refer folks to official websites, whether it's the Secretary of State or the LA County Registrar. I have seen a lot of voting information on social media that looks great, is well designed, but gets the facts wrong, which has been really frustrating. And partially in response to that, Common Cause has launched a social media monitoring campaign with our volunteers to kind of identify misinformation. And I think one of the major takeaways that I'm learning is when you see misinformation, not to engage with that content or repost or retweet it because you're just further sharing that information further. But I think a good way to respond to that is just by putting out the accurate information from the official sources. And LA County has very well designed graphics. I follow you all on Instagram and it's great, beautiful content. So I would recommend that people just go ahead and share that. And not only is it eye-catching, but it's accurate.
I think for us, what we do is we actually, as part of our campaign, Yo Soy California y Voto, I'm California and I vote, we grabbed all the websites from the Trusted Resources, the Secretary of State, the LA County Register of Voters, and we put them in our CHIRLA website, and we just added chirla.org/elections 2020. So we refer people to our website when people call in our hotline and they have questions, to make sure to correct them. So again, we're using the resources that are already available and just sharing them with our community and just translating messages. Like, we don't translate anything on our own. Like, we rather use the translations that are from the trusted election officials, so that when our community sees something from us, it's the same thing that they're seeing from the registrar, and they don't get confused on what the messaging is across different languages. And I know they trust us to receive that information. So even if they see it with a graphic from our organization, it's their words, their messaging, because that's what they're gonna see when they get to the polling place or the vote centers.
Great, thank you. So just a final question, we're almost at time. So the group that was in the audience today are all organizations or other government agencies that want to help support voter education during this period. So lots of ambassadors from this call, Jeff.
Yeah,
And so what message do you have for this audience as people continue their voter education efforts? What kind of tips do you all want to leave them with? Kind of what are our marching orders as ambassadors as we are now at E-26 until Election Day? And just a comment from all of you as we wrap up.
Share the correct information, encourage people to take care of things as early as possible, and just stay informed. And if you've already voted, don't tune things out, because there's other people who haven't voted and you can get that information to them.
Yeah, I think in addition to what Jeff said, just checking in on, your family and friends and asking them about what their voting plan is, sharing the plan.lavote.net website with them, really get them thinking about how they're going to cast their ballot, and encourage them to do it early, like Jeff said.
I think for us, just because I work with a community that works with people of color, Latinos, people that are hardly ever get reached out to, if you are a small organization just starting to do this work, don't be afraid to share that information. It's better even if you only talk to 10 people, then those are 10 more people that get to reach out. I know the power of speaking to someone in their language, and from someone that is a trusted source. It's gonna just make sure that people go and vote, and that's what I would recommend.
Great. Well, Jeff, Karen, Kiana, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. I know that people are leaving with a lot of great content, lots of websites and links for sure that were shared today. So I just want to thank you guys for again, taking the time at E-26. We are all so slammed and so busy. Truly appreciate your partnerships year round, and especially in this season. So thank you guys. So now we are just at the last minute of the conversation. I just want to thank the people that make this possible, which is of course our sponsors, the James Irvine Foundation and Democracy Fund. I want to thank our partners. We have, of course, the Office of the Los Angeles Register Recorder, who's been part of FOST since the beginning, almost 10 years ago now, hard to believe. And then we also have our Voters Choice Los Angeles Steering Committee and Voters Choice Los Angeles partners, folks that are engaged in kind of putting events like this together and resources and materials out. I wanted to share one last item that we will be emailing all of you. It is this, our voting links and resources for LA County. We will make sure to you and email them to you in the post-election website. So with that, I want to share that next week on October 14th, we have a final event that will be a conversation on elections statewide with California Secretary of State and Senator Tom Umberg, as well as other other county election officials to continue the conversation about voting at the state level. And so with that, I think I got through all of my thank yous. I want to say one more thing, which is give us your feedback. Let us know what information is helpful to you from events like this so that it can inform our planning. So you will have a survey link that pops up when you close off the event. And stay in touch. If you have any questions, if your question wasn't answered, we have it. We'll connect with Jeff and we will send out all the follow-ups that were mentioned in this conversation. So with that, thank you everybody. Happy E26. Thank you for all your efforts and help in getting LA voters out for this season. Vote early, vote today. Thank you all.